Coming up this week on the Markcast. Well, the XFL and USFL reportedly have an agreement in place in regards to the terms for their upcoming merged league. Both leagues are now entering a quiet period, waiting for the paperwork to be finalized. But with fans of both leagues, the XFL and USFL, already feeling left out from this process, is the new merged league dead on arrival? Grab your deputy hat and do your best Rick Grimes Carl impression as we ask the question, are we the Walking Dead?
We tell ourselves that we are the Walking Dead.
Huge show this week. Really excited to bring back Anthony Miller, get his thoughts on the XFL-USFL merger agreement as reported by Mike Mitchell last week. What are we hearing timeline-wise coming up? What is Anthony expecting? Is Anthony going to be on board when all of this is done? Excited to hear from him.
They have to merge at this point. It's too late now. Like you said, the trust would be broken if they don't merge. And they're like, oh yeah, we're just going to keep playing. Because everyone knows that it means like, okay, well, they're going to die. They're going to die a slow, painful death. And why am I going to be involved in this league if I know it's not going to survive after next year? Because that's what it really is. Like, especially for the XFL, if this merger doesn't happen after next year, they're done. In the USFL, they maybe have 1 or 2 more years and then they're done.
Then lots of CFL stuff to talk through heading into week 19 here. We have CFL on TSN's Farhan Lalji talking through all of the different teams throughout the CFL, which coaches are on the hot seat, off-season changes Farhan is hearing, and also talking CFL playoffs.
That's a loss they're going to look back on and regret. I don't know that there's a path to victory for BC in Winnipeg in a Western final. And I got a lot of respect for that team, but that team is built a certain way, and Winnipeg is built a certain way. And if the conditions are what they typically are in mid-November in Winnipeg, I think the Winnipeg team is built for those conditions.
Then longtime friend of the show, Greg Peach, coming back on, former Edmonton, Hamilton, and Winnipeg Blue Bombers player, getting his thoughts. CFL Week 19, exciting matchups this weekend.
Obviously, I'm rooting for Winnipeg, but Vernon, just a top-notch dude, and I'm so excited for him and the success that he's having. I mean, he's bombing it this year, and I'd love to see him break that 5,000 yards for the season.
And then speaking of Edmonton, we have Kevin Brown, standout running back from the Edmonton Elks, joining the show, getting his thoughts on what's been a rocky, but overall, a feeling like we're trending in a positive direction season for the Edmonton Elks.
We're building now for next season, and we're approaching every game like it's a playoff game. So for us, it's to be physical, to hit them first, and to come out fast.
Hope you guys enjoy. Like and subscribe. Hey guys, welcome to the Markcast. Reed here. Shout out Greg Parks, XFL board, on his zombie analogy this week, talking on the XFL Insider podcast. I texted Greg the second I saw his tweet. I said, thank you very much for helping me figure out the theme for this week coming back from Vegas. Was down there for the Kraken game against the Vegas Golden Knights. So appreciate Greg helping make my life easy. Trying to figure out, was going to go with the Quiet Place, that John Krasinski movie. Still might, depending on how long this quiet period goes with the XFL, we might be entering the Quiet Place next week. But for right now, we are the Walking Dead. We have Rick Carl Grimes, all that stuff. Really appreciate that. Good show today. Like I said, appreciate Anthony Miller making time here, balancing. We got Thursday Night Football tonight, Anthony's work schedule, Kraken playing, the Preds. Lots of things going on. Really appreciate that. Farhan, always making time. I didn't get to see him, but got to correspond with Farhan last week when we were at the BC Place for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers game there. You could hear my thoughts extended with Evan and Jason on the Monday recap we did following that. Really appreciate Greg Peach coming back on. Always happy to jump on. He hops on at a moment's notice. Happy to chat with him and really appreciate his willingness. And then, of course, Edmonton, always a great team to work with, getting players on. Really appreciate getting to talk with Kevin Brown with the Edmonton Elks here. Like I said, season probably not what they wanted it to be, but certainly feels like things are trending in the right direction. Farhan thinks the same kind of in his interview. You'll hear it coming up. So that should do it for me today. Unless there's any future read updates, I'll check in at the end of the show. But like I said, hope you guys enjoy. Weird time right now. Quiet Plays, Zombie, XFL showcases. Didn't seem like That was a big to do over the weekend. We have a draft coming up that's been delayed, so we'll see what's going on. But stay tuned. Make sure you're subscribed. We'll keep you updated with the shorts and live shows and everything else as need be. So we'll see you guys at the end. Thanks. Well, Anthony, I'm doing my best Rick Grimes impression today. Where The Walking Dead, Carl, and all. I fell off that show. I didn't make it to. I did watch like everything that you missed in The Walking Dead in like 17 minutes or whatever after the season ended. But we are here. We had you on the breaking news day with Mike and the live stream. Now, more time to process. We obviously have the agreement that Mike put out last week, the report after our show, and then the Ben Fisher's report as well. We'll get into all that. How are you feeling now, kind of 2 weeks post removed from all this?
I think the feelings have kind of died down. Now I'm at the point where I'm just like, all right, let's get this train rolling. Let's try to figure out what's going on. I think just the idea of not knowing how this is going to work out, with the merger, I just, at this point, I've kind of calmed down a bit. And I'm just like, we'll just kind of see what happens, because I mean, there's so many possibilities. And I think once we have our minds running wild with it, then it's going to drive us nuts. So I'm just going to kind of let the process play out.
Yeah, I know. So they had the showcase on Saturday, and Greg wasn't at it, but I think he did the write-up because Michael was there with, what is it now, the Player 54 podcast. He was there, Buckley was there. Greg called it like the zombie XFL, which I thought very like kind of apropos right now, because I don't know. And I feel similarly about the USFL. Like, okay, we're tweeting out, okay, Brandon Aubrey stats today from the Dallas Cowboys, but it doesn't really feel like either league is doing a lot. And I don't know if you're a fan of either league, how we're supposed to feel right now. How do you feel?
I mean, it's hard to say that the XFL is not doing anything, because let's face it, their offseason began in May. So all their player signings, their college drafts, all that stuff happened during the summer. So I think we talked about this in our group chat, but I think Mike brought up that pretty much every team is at 70 or more players. So it's like, how many more players can you sign? Obviously, you want to try to get some of the top players in free agency, anyone who dropped off, after, training camp. So they probably want to go after those players. But for the most part, this is probably going to be the slower part of the offseason for the XFL. For the USFL, it's going to be different because their offseason began in July. So now they got, this October free agency going on right now, and they're going to go after players that, just got their contracts released from other USFL teams and try to pick up other players. So it seems like they're a little more active, but that's because they need to kind of rebuild their rosters and stuff like that. So I don't think too much into the XFL's not doing anything. The USFL is doing very little, because there's really not much to do right now unless they set up these drafts. But the XFL's already kind of pushed off one of the drafts, so I'm sure there's kind of a holding period. But there's got to be a point where these leagues, I wonder if there's some kind of deadline for them to be like, look, if we don't merge by this date, we're just going to have to move forward with our seasons. Because the one thing I've been thinking about is, what are the stadium leases for the XFL like? Like, do they have a certain time frame that they, have the stadiums? Because if they try to move to April, start at the same time as the USFL, that's going to mess up all their stadium leases. So honestly, at this point, I'm not really banking on this league, the two leagues merging for 2024. It doesn't really make sense to at this point. Just play out the seasons and then make all your changes after the USFL season's done next year.
Is that, and I think timing wise, that makes the most sense, because we lived through all this stuff with the Vegas and getting the schedule out, and they waited too long. And that's why we didn't have the Battlehawks weren't home for the first 3 weeks. And because this isn't like Taylor Swift, I'm booking the tour and like, okay, well, we're going to make space here to kind of do it. Does that excite the fan bases going into this year, knowing that that's what's going on next year? Or is this kind of a monkey on the back? Like, well, this is kind of a lame duck season. Like, I don't know how to react to that. What do you make?
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't really know how to make of it either, because especially with the reports coming out about some of the teams that might be on the out, like, is that going to affect ticket sales? Is that going to affect people's interest in these leagues? Like, especially in Houston, like, let's just say they choose the Gamblers over the Roughnecks and the Roughnecks don't survive. Are those fans really even going to care about the Roughnecks? Are they going to come out for it knowing that this team's going to get swept under our feet after the season? So I think just the uncertainty of that can definitely mess up, the interest level. I seriously doubt they're going to do as well in the ratings. I doubt they're going to do as well in the in attendance. And you just brought up Vegas. That's a great question. What's going to happen with the Vipers? What if the XFL continues? I seriously doubt at this point they can find a home for them unless they already have a stadium agreement already in place for some cities. So are they going to end up playing in Arlington, and Arlington's going to have two teams? Like it's a holding period right now, and I don't know if the interest is going to quite be there. It could end up being like this season for both leagues is going to be a squash, and they're going to rebrand whatever with this NSFL X whatever the hell is going to be, but it's going to be something. And I think they're probably just going to say forget about this upcoming season.
And that's what that's where I get to this difficult position, right? So if you go in, we make it, so we'll talk through Mike's article here, but we're in the holding period. They've submitted, which it was like weird timing. Like we had Kaplan on last week, and we're kind of pontificating about that. And like I messaged Mike, I'm like, is this really weird timing that we were kind of having this debate about whether the agreement was submitted, and then Mike's got the article? But that's great. I love the clarity of that. But so how do you expect if you're a coach on the Vegas Vipers, if the announcement comes out, okay, the Vipers are going away this year, how do you do that? Or else how do you live through not knowing for a year which teams are going to make it, right? And this is the same with the season tickets. I mean, I was just in Vegas with my friend Michael, and he's like, I'm out on, like, I want my money back from the Sea Dragons tickets. Like, I am moving on because I now have no faith in any of this at all. Like even if the Sea Dragons survive, but we're going to a hub, like I have no faith in any of this at all.
Yeah, I agree. And if I was a fan for somebody like Seattle or the Houston Roughnecks, or I would feel the same way. I wouldn't have any loyalty to them, and it is going to make this season a wash. So I wonder, could they start moving into a hub model, this year, and just start making the transition and get people ready for it? Because it's like, what about the coaches that, for these teams that are going to leave? Like, I think it's just being told, hey, you're going to go through 2024, then you're going to lose your job. Like that. I don't know. That just, what about the staff members? I mean, it's probably going to affect them more because, coaches and players can leave and go find other teams and, try to go to the NFL or IFL or wherever. But what about the staff members who, are full-time employees of the XFL, and they're told, hey, I know you work for the St. Louis, or you work for the Seattle Sea Dragons, but to let you know, after 2024, you're done. Like you're going to be released after the season. Like people are going to be losing jobs out of it. So I don't know. No matter what happens, this is going to be a debacle for a lot of people's lives. It's going to mess up a lot of people's lives, and it's going to be a really bumpy road for these leagues for the next year or two to try to get through the PR part of this. But once they can get everything settled down and, get, whatever it is, 10, 12 teams, rolling, and then they can start building off of that, then I think they're going to be fine. But until then, for the next year or two, it's going to be a PR nightmare for both leagues.
Well, because I was talking with one of the staff members for one of the teams, and they were saying like, we kind of need to know now, right? Like I don't have the luxury of having a month, 2 months, a year, whatever. I mean, we just saw Matt, the communications guy for the Renegades, and he's with Rev, and that's also in Dallas anyway. And, so maybe that's a better position, right? And I'm sure it has more stability on that, but you're sitting there like, why am I waiting around for this at this point? Like, I feel like it was already a leap to kind of sign on to this league, right? Hey, it's a startup, whatever. And now it's like the first speed bump in the road. They're like, well, we don't even know if we want to do it. I'm like, I'm getting off the ship right now. Like, it was hard for me. Like, as someone that's followed this, not even having my livelihood rely on this, I couldn't imagine that stress.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people have families to think about, and they can't be a part of something if they don't know what's. I mean, I can't even imagine what the last 2-3 weeks have been for like a typical staff member of this league, because right now they can only think about, am I going to still have a job? Because we talked about this before. We know what happens with mergers. When mergers happen, people end up losing jobs. That's just the reality of it. They need to cut on, but they have a budget. They have to cut people out. So it's going to be the harsh reality of it. And again, it's going to be a nightmare PR wise. A lot of people are going to lose jobs. A lot of people are going to be, excuse my language, they're going to be pissed off because they're losing their jobs. So it's going to be a nightmare regardless. And I can't imagine what the employees are going through right now.
So we had Mike's article out here talking about the agreement coming out late Friday, because I talked with Dan, and Dan had said, there's one thing to say we're intending to merge, it's another thing to kind of proclaim that. Then you're filing the paperwork. We've seen the PGA and Live say they want to move into a merger, not gotten to that point yet. So now we have this. It's at least a 30-day kind of waiting period while it undergoes a regulatory review. Does that make you feel like at least we kind of have the shot clock now? We know what's happening with this?
I mean, kind of. I mean, I guess we kind of have a general idea of what the timeline could be. I think the article said it could be about a month that it could take, but it could also take longer. It could also take shorter. So I think we're still in the holding period where we don't. I mean, I guess we kind of have a general idea. It could be a month, but with Fox's involvement and stuff like that, is that going to make it a little bit longer? Is there a longer conversation that needs to be had? So, I certainly hope that they can figure this out within 30 days and start getting the ball rolling. But you just never know with these situations. So I still feel like we're still in this waiting period where we don't know what's going to happen, because now we're in mid-October. We're 4 months away from the XFL season starting, and we still don't know if they're going to truly merge or not. There could be an issue that pops up with it. So it's just one of those where, what, I'm taking my mind off of it, and I'm just going to wait until the merger actually happens, and then we can start talking about what's going to happen from there.
In terms of, and we kind of pontificated about this during the live show, the timing of this kind of where, Mike had reported they had been talking since after the USFL championship game, that I don't know if it almost feels like this took too long to get to this point where it is. And like the same thing with the Vegas thing last year, there's this thing, hey, you got a hard deadline you got to hit here. We're kind of messing around. I don't know if you could handle a mulligan or shift at this point. I don't know. It just feels weird timing to me that we're in mid-October and we're debating this very similarly to last year with the Vegas situation.
Yeah, because like I said, I feel like at this point, the Vipers, are you going to find a home for them in, I don't know, Arizona, Nashville, that they talk I think it's too late for that. I think you either go back to Cashman Field or you're going to be playing in Arlington. I think we're going to have the Arlington Vipers and the Arlington Renegades. I really think that's what's going to end up happening, because I don't know how quickly this merger is going to happen. I mean, at this point, it's going to be such a rush job if they just go with, all right, 10, 12 teams, we're cutting everybody, we're cutting these 4 teams and we're moving forward with this in April. I just feel like that's too hectic, and there's so many elements to it that they got to think about. So I certainly hope they don't rush this. I hope at this point, I think it's just smarter. Let's just get through the 2024 seasons with the XFL and USFL, and then just merge from there. Because right now it's going to be a mess if they try to do it, and I'm really worried about how it's going to look on television. How the teams are going to look. It's going to be a mess.
Does the fact that, and we tracked all this with the CFL, the fact that the XFL was the one to reach out to the USFL, I guess, first off, does that, now that we've kind of lived through that, does that in any way give you hesitancy about the XFL's commitment to a long-term path here, considering they were the ones 1 year in a loss, they were the ones that reached out?
I think I have longevity questions for both leagues, but probably more for the XFL, if I'm being honest. For them to be the ones that reached out and said, hey, let's merge, that just shows me that, yes, we talked about the $60 million losses are not as big as people make it out to be, but still at the same time, they did lose money, and they did, they went bigger on the picture and got their teams into home markets. So they did spend a lot more money. That is the reality of the situation. And, you look at Redbird, you look at, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, Danny Garcia, do they want to spend the money to keep this league running if they're not going to, make profit off of it? It just seems like right now, hate to say it, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson has not had the greatest of years over the last year or so with how Black Adam's done, and I don't think he's really generated the revenue that he was hoping he was going to get, and he's not as involved with DC as he was hoping he was going to be when he got kicked out the door. So, does he legitimately have the money? I mean, Redbird is so involved in other sports teams and stuff like that I'm sure they can probably help and pay for it. But what about Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and Danny Garcia? It was just interesting how the two of them were just so vague about their statement after the merger, where it's just 3-4 words. That's it. That's all we're tweeting. it just feels to me like I think they're almost kind of creeping out the door, and they need to lean on the USFL to kind of save them. So yeah, I think the XFL may end up dying because they're spending too much money, and the USFL is going to die because people just don't want to watch football games with no fans. Like it just takes away from the experience. I know USFL fans don't want to hear that, but that is the reality of the situation. So, the merger has to happen, but I feel like the XFL may die quicker if they don't get this done.
It seems like, and I can't remember if we talked about on the podcast or off, but like Redbird came in, hey, we get the Rock on this. We're going to tweet. He can put out. This is going to be maybe an easier flip than we thought, right? And like what I've said online before too is, just because the USFL outlasting the XFL, okay, business wise, safer makes more sense, but like that doesn't necessarily make it right. But from a fan viewer perspective, right? And if the USFL's only way they won was just, well, we outlasted the XFL because we weren't spending as much money. Like, to me, that's not a victory. I mean, I'm kind of getting in with the AEW, WWE stuff right now, and there's a lot of a kind of a pissing contest going back and forth with them, and like it's interesting to see how these companies work, but like purely just, well, we didn't spend as much, so we outlasted you. That doesn't, to me, justify the business model as successful as more of just it has a longevity. But I don't know what that plan is to expand. If that was really terrible way to describe that.
No, it makes sense because I mean, like, we heard Daryl Johnson say last year that he was disappointed with the ratings. So, what makes the USFL think the ratings are going to get better in season 3 if they're still, in their hub cities and it's the same teams? Like, I just don't see how they're going to do better. I think more likely the XFL has a little bit of a better chance of having better ratings because they're just more established, and hopefully maybe they can get the Vipers into a good home, and that I think they have a better chance of it. But the USFL can't lose money if they're not making money either. So not having fans and all that, it still is like, how are they making money? How are they generating revenue? So at the end of the day, like, yeah, the XFL may die sooner because they're spending too much money, but the USFL is going to die a slow, painful death because they're not spending money either. So it's going to end up hurting them. So that's how both leagues are going to die. They're just going to die in different ways.
Last question that I want to talk through this Ben Fisher said before we get out. To me, talking about this and the XFL, reaching out, it is kind of like, I think it's Seinfeld, where it's like you don't want to lose face, right? You want to save face. And it feels like, and we've talked through the Red Bird, they were the ones, it was kind of the chicken match, and they were the ones that pulled up first, right? And I mean, I've lived through the Monday Night Wars and all of that kind of stuff. And, it's one thing to go head to head or whatever. And the first one to pull, for whatever reason, and it could just be Redbird's cold feet or whatever, but it doesn't help that I guess just your messaging to fans as well. It's like, hey, like, trust us, we're going to be here for you guys, when it was the first sign of challenges here, and it's like, wow, okay, we're like, we're done.
Yeah, I think the difference though is when you when it was like WWE versus WCW and stuff like that, like, even though like WCW ended up dying, you at least at least fans knew WWE was going to survive no matter what, because they have such a big name brand that there's nothing that's going to really kill them unless it's like, and it's such a massive issue that it ends up killing the league. But WWE is going to survive. In this case, USFL and XFL are going to die. So it's just a matter of, if the USFL wants to celebrate lasting one more season than them, all right, great. But, you're probably still going to end up folding because you're not making money either, unless you actually go into your team's home markets, which I don't know if they're willing to. It just doesn't seem like they're really in a rush to. They keep hanging out in Canton, Ohio, and it's just like, you don't have a team there. That doesn't make any sense. Like, it's just, I get why they went slow, and it's probably the smarter business decision. But at the same time, it's like, you're heading to season 3. You should be in home markets by now. If you wanted to slow progression, fine. But now we're heading to season 3, and it doesn't sound like it's going to be 6 to 8 cities. It sounds like they're going to still stick with the 4 hub cities, and that's not encouraging at all. Like, they should be, if they were really making money, they would progress a little bit quicker than that.
Well, it doesn't excite. I mean, and this is why I've said on here, like, I'm kind of, depending on how this goes, could be hesitant about this because I need to see a path forward here, and where I don't see like, well, the Sea Dragons are going to play in Arizona for a year, but then don't worry, you're going to get it back. So you can't guarantee that now. I mean, we've lived through canceled season, this now. Like I said, you're asking so much of the fans. It's just putting them in a hard position. I just don't know if the the executives up in the ivory towers, are living through this, and it was just kind of what you're asking these fans to do. I mean, we've talked before. Pat Ruffino was saying, there's St. Louis people that flat are not buying season tickets until there's a season 2 because they don't have any faith in that. The other thing I just wanted to get to before we get out of here, so Ben Fisher, I'm sitting there Friday. Ben tweets out. Ben's been on the show, Sports Business Show. He's like, merge XFL and USFL league to play on Fox, and they're trying to sell teams. And I'm like, I emailed Ben. I'm like, okay, what is the context of this? Like, where? Because it was just really weird how he tweeted that. So I guess he was at some symposium at the Columbia University Sports Management Conference, and Larry Jones, who's a Fox Sports EVP and consultant to the network, Ben said it was literally 90 seconds of the thing, but that they were going to play on Fox, which I said, spoiler alert, like a TV or a merge league plans to play on the Football Network, and then obviously still looking forward to selling the franchises in 3 to 4 years, which I will give my thoughts in a minute. I'll ask yours on that. What do you make of that part of it, that it still would be this merge league's plan to sell franchises off?
Let's see, it's 2023. They start in 2022, so next year will be 3 years, and they're still not in home markets. I just don't see how they can sell the franchises. I mean, they're still in the hub model. It's like, so are they adding 3-4 more years now to that timeline, and they're hoping to sell it? It's just like, at some point, it's just like, I don't know. I'm just not buying it. Like, I don't think they have the business model to get to that point. This is the conversation that has been talked about, where I'm sure both leagues like to eventually get to the point where they're, having team owners that are running these teams and paying the money for it. But I mean, we're heading into season 3. We have 4 hub cities with these 8 teams in the USFL. It's just like, you can't keep adding on to the timeline. It's either you're going to make the push to get in the home markets, you're going to make the push to have people buy. The reason why nobody wants to buy these franchises is just the ratings keep going down. There's not as much interest as I think people would like to have. This is a very niche market. Like, there's a certain fan base that likes watching spring football. And I don't know if it has enough to really get people's interest, be like, oh, let's go buy a football team in the USFL and hope we can make money off of it, because they're going to lose so much money if their teams are not even in their home markets, or if they are in the home markets, that fans don't care about it in the cities because they haven't been playing those cities for all these years. And now all of a sudden they need to care about, like New Orleans Breakers. What if somebody buys the New Orleans Breakers 3-4 years down the road, and they're like, well, it's been like 5-6 years, we haven't had them in our city, why would I care? Like, that's why you want to put them in the home market, so they can. I just don't see it happening. I don't think they're gonna sell franchises, because I just don't think people. I don't think millionaires and billionaires want to spend the money on a football league where they're guaranteed to lose money. Like, they're not going to make profit off of these teams.
It's hard for me, unless you have a team in the market for 5 years, 10 years, and you're showing continual growth and kind of revenue model that way. To me, it's like, here, you go spend the money. And, we cover the CFL. There's 9 teams in the CFL. The CFL collectively loses money every single year, and has for its entire lifespan. Some of the community-owned teams make money and they can profit, and then there's lean years, but collectively, and then that came out during the COVID when they were trying to get funding from the Canadian government, and they said, no, I think it was $8 to $10 million a year collectively at the CFL, when you balance it all out. And it's and this is a league this is a national league, of Canada. Like, you're asking so much of this, and this feels like another step of Redbird reaching out to Fox, like, here, you take this. And now it's, well, in 3 or 4 years, like, here, you take this. At some point, someone's got to take ownership of this and really, dive in, invest the money. Fox, like you said, doesn't seem willing to do it. XFL has not, at least 1 year in, does not seem willing to do it. And there's no way to do this on the cheap unless you're Brian Woods, having players pay, doing a hub model, TV only. There's no way to do this in home markets without losing considerable amount of money. And it doesn't seem like anybody gets that.
There's only two ways that selling franchises can work. One, you get Taylor Swift to come to your games, which I don't think the USFL, XFL is going to do. So, two, you got to get the NFL involved. I mean, at the end of the day, the only way this thing works is if you get the NFL to buy into having a spring league. They put money into it, and then you'll get interest from people wanting to buy franchises. I mean, look at the WNBA. That league, as much as I love the WNBA, they lose millions of dollars a year, and the only way it survives is that the NBA has been fronting money for them for years to keep their franchises and keep the league afloat. That's the only way this is going to work too. That's the only reason why the NFL Europe lasted so long. The NFL had to keep it afloat, but they were losing millions off of it, and that's why they got rid of it. So it's going to be you have to make a pitch to the NFL. It's not selling franchises; is you have to sell the league to the NFL and make them think, yes, we need a spring league, we need a developmental league for these players. Because that's the only way this is going to work. They cannot survive on their own without the NFL getting involved, dropping their money to help this league survive. Otherwise, all these spring leagues are going to keep dying. Some league has got to step up and make a deal with the NFL. But is the NFL willing to lose millions of dollars a year? I don't know if they are. They made it clear after they cut NFL Europe that they were not willing to lose that much money each year. Are they willing to do it again? I don't know. I mean, they've been getting glowing endorsements from Dan Campbell and Bill Belichick, which could help. But at the end of the day, the NFL is all about making money. That's all they care about. And if they see that, the USFL and the XFL, or, if they combine the NSFL, whatever the hell it's going to be, if they see it that it could, it could help them, then they'll do it. But I don't know. I think the only way this works is if the NFL's involved.
Last point for me here. We'll get out of here, and I'll give you if you have any other thoughts on this. Like, just if I have not made it, I just want to make sure I make it as incredibly clear as I can on here. Like, I see the XFL, they're tweeting out like crossword puzzle stuff today. It's great. I mean, do social work. That's awesome. We're selling these suites, whatever. I cannot imagine a world where I would ever recommend any XFL or USFL fan to put down money right now on any of this, because to me, like and I don't mean to be like blunt about it, but like you've lost, like when it's the chicken match, whatever, and you blink, and like, to me, it's like they blinked. And now I don't have faith in this anymore, until I see a long-term plan or an agreement of like, this is what's happening, or this didn't work out, but we're still committed. And even at that point, it's words like it's so hard to build up the trust for, anything in the world, but especially something like this. And I feel like if you're in a relationship with someone and they like, maybe they didn't cheat on you, but they're like, well, I was thinking about it, or I was texting, and you're like, once you kind of devolve that trust, it's very hard to build that back. And I don't know anyone in the world that's buying Battlehawk suites right now, or Renegade suites, or the Seattle. I got the email, the Seattle suites. Like, to me, you've soured this, and at least for the XFL, and I don't speak for the USFL fans, but I say as a season ticket holder for the XFL that's bought 4 tickets front row at 50-yard line, like, trust is very dissolved at this point.
Yeah, I agree. Look, they opened up the can of worms. So at this point, you can't put those worms back in the can. So it's either you go all in on this merger, or, this thing is pretty much going to be over. Like, I even wonder, like, are they even going to play a season next year? Like, are they even going to legitimately do it? Even if they do a merger and they wait till 2025, do they even play this year? Like, that, to me, it's just, now we're at a point where you either got to merge so quickly and just get it over with and get it done, or maybe you need to hold off for one more year. Maybe you need to make sure you get this merger right. Maybe you need to find a way. Can we save 16 teams and make sure nobody loses their jobs? It's just, there's so many elements to this. And I mean, at the end of the day, we've talked about it, like they have to merge at this point. It's too late now. Like you said, the trust would be broken if they don't merge, and they're like, oh yeah, we're just gonna keep playing, because everyone knows that it means like, okay, well, they're gonna die. They're gonna die a slow, painful death. And why am I gonna be involved in this league if I know it's not going to survive after next year? Because that's what it really is. Like, especially for the XFL, if this merger doesn't happen after next year, they're done. In the USFL, they maybe have 1 or 2 more years, and then they're done.
Yeah, like I said, even if you didn't, physically, and I'm not saying like cheated as in like the XFL and the USFL, like, the second that you were like, I'm out of this relationship, I just don't think with the fans you can ask them to go back in. And like you said, if this doesn't go, and even if it does, if it doesn't look in the form, that I think a lot of people want, we've already had comments on. I think Anthony, I appreciate it. Like I said, kind of keep it in mind. I haven't gotten an update about the Broncos game, so I don't know if they have scored yet. Kraken still holding the Predators 0-0 here. So go get to your Stars. I appreciate it. Anything else from you?
No, I'm good. I appreciate the time, Reed, and I would just say, let's see how many times Taylor Swift's been on camera. It's probably more than the score is. So,
yeah, Al Michaels was like, I'm not talking about that. So we'll see. I don't know. Al, Amazon pays your paycheck, so we'll see what Al does here.
Yeah, he's definitely going to talk about it.
Well, back here today, we were a few hundred feet from each other on Friday at BC Place here, and now we have Farhan here live. What about those Vancouver Canucks, man? Really just coming out of the gate, all cylinders firing.
Yeah, they played great, and certainly nobody expected them to do that to a team that good. And maybe Edmonton kind of took it for granted because they've had their way with Vancouver over the years, and so much anticipation, right? Like having been around the Canucks a decade ago when they had goals and meaningful aspirations here of getting to a cup final. You could see that there were moments early that sometimes you just don't have it when you're looking that far ahead. And maybe the Oilers didn't have it last night, but you got to give the Canucks credit. There was a lot of questions going into the game and a lot of storylines. And, for Brock Besser with what he's been through with the illness and eventual passing of his father over the last couple of years, like cool to see him get 4 goals. And, just for one day they were on top of the hockey world. We'll see what it looks like. They play Edmonton again on Saturday. And, I still think this is a bubble team, but at least that gave them an indication of what they could be if they play the game the right way.
Yeah, well, I was, what was I going to say? Connor Bedard, scored a goal. We know he's not a bust, so that'll be it for the hockey talk here on the podcast. It was on Rod's show talking Kraken. It was crazy. I'm like, now I'm the Kraken guy. Anyway, we're here talking CFL Week 19. I want to get your thoughts on the Edmonton situation and all of that as well. But to me, and obviously you were in the professional sense. I was in the fan sense Friday. But heartbreaking loss for the Lions. Like, what did you read of that? Because to me, that was the season kind of finale for me.
Yeah, it was tough, right? I mean, that's a loss they're going to look back on and regret. I don't know that there's a path to victory for BC in Winnipeg in a Western final. And I got a lot of respect for that team, but that team is built a certain way and Winnipeg is built a certain way. And if the conditions are what they typically are in mid-November in Winnipeg, I think the Winnipeg team is built for those conditions right now. Me, like I know enough people around the league. People think, oh, you live in Vancouver, you're a Lions homer. I'm not. But I certainly was hoping they would win that game for the only reason that it would have made for a better West final. Like, I think the Western final in BC would have been a pick'em. I don't think the Lions would have been favored. I think it just would have been 50-50. Either team could win. Both teams could put their best foot forward, and it would have been a lot of fun to watch. I think now it's likely to be a much more one-sided, less entertaining game if you're a neutral observer, right, as opposed to a Winnipeg fan. So, I think that's disappointing for them. And BC had it, right? Like, they had the lead, and there were people are going to focus on Dominic Rhymes and what happened at the end of the game. But there were so many moments during that game, beginning with the kickoff out of bounds after BC took a 2-score lead that just kind of gave Winnipeg some life to get right back into it. And then so many others. I thought they got a little out-coached in the second half. There were a lot of things that I think they're going to regret or wish they had back.
In terms of, because we've talked about this, I don't think the Lions would be favored at all at home, but it's at least an even playing field where you go in and the conditions are so much. But I went back, obviously we were there, and then I went back and listened to your call, at the end of the game and Rhymes and all of that. Like, how is that just a brain fart? Like, how did you read that? And he kept looking back and trying to, how did you kind of process that whole situation?
Yeah, look, these things happen fast. And Rick Campbell said after the game that he did call the receivers in to explain the situation. Rhymes was not in that conversation. The other receivers were. But Rhymes himself said after the game that, the receivers did talk to me about it, and I knew the situation, and I made a mistake. And for him, he just saw the end zone, right? There's no guarantee of a field goal as good as Sean White is. You might not be 100% sure of where you are in the field or how much time is left. And if you see the end zone, you might want to just take it. Now, certainly, when he broke the second tackle, I think it was from Evan Holm. He was at Holm was the first one. I forget who the second one was. It might have been Cramdy. And then I think it was around the 32-yard line, and there was a couple seconds left in the clock. So if he gives himself up and goes down, it's a very makeable field goal for Sean White. But, it's hard to process that in real time, right? It looks so easy from afar. And if he had caught it and gone down right away, maybe he's too far away, right? So there were just so many moments in that game. And you and I both know how football works, that we get so focused on two things: the last plays and the quarterback play, right? Like, those are the two things that everybody wants to focus on, but there's so many more other things that the Lions could lament. I mean, you just look at the spot, right? I certainly thought not so much in the moment, but after the fact, when I looked at more replays, that Vernon Adams did have the first down, and it was a bad spot, right? Like, there were so many things along the way that BC can look back on, but you know what? Convert on third down. Like, why you can't convert on 3rd and 1? And we're not talking about rhymes. We're not talking about a bad spot, so give Winnipeg credit. They rallied. They showed what champions do, right? Like, they just kept fighting.
I don't, and I had tweeted that out following the Packers game Monday, where they had the spot against the Raiders, and I don't understand how the CFL call center isn't there. And I understand that we had used the challenges earlier in the game and all of that.
Yeah, the command center could have gotten involved there. They could have, and I haven't heard back yet on whether they did, but it happened so fast that it doesn't sound like they did.
Yeah. In terms of, I don't know, just reflections for that. I mean, because I don't know, how do you view, I guess, and I don't want to write the obituary too early, but how do you view kind of the BC Lions this season? I was talking with people in the stands, and I think that BC had done a good job, Matt and everyone with the team, of, this is a really important game, right? We were talking with people even after the game, like, oh, so are they out? I'm like, well, no, that wasn't a playoff game, but it was kind of felt that way. Is BC's window, are we going into next year in terms of this championship caliber team? Like, how do you view them kind of in the spot now?
Yeah, I don't think they're going anywhere, right? Vernon Adams is going to be there. I think Vernon Adams as a quarterback took a really good step this season and is going to continue to take a step. Like, I'm not willing to write this off yet for the league, right? I mean, I'm not going to, come on any shows and say, oh, don't watch the West Final, right? Like, that's not how I view it, right? Because this is football, and the Lions are still a good football team. So there's still a lot of growth to happen. But, there was a lot of angst in the marketplace about what's this season going to look like for the Lions without Nathan Rourke, right? And whether you believed or didn't believe in Vernon, you probably thought, oh, this team can't really contend without Nathan. Well, guess what? They did, and they're contending. And Vernon's had a great year. And really, for me, that game – kind of determined my MOP, right? Like, Vernon was right in there trading punches with Zach Caleros, and Brady Oliveira was right there. So, Vernon's not going anywhere. He's not old. The core of that receiving core is going to be back. I don't know about Lucky Whitehead, but I think the rest of them are all going to be back and part of the mix of what's going on. And it was a really good group. And then, defensively, most of the pieces are there. So they're still going to have to add, but it's not like, you look at Winnipeg and you think they're getting older. Like, their core, whether they want to admit it or not, their core is appreciably getting older, right? Whether you're Jeffcoat, Jefferson, Big Hill, whatever, like they're all getting older. And so the Lions aren't in that window. Now, they need to do a few things to, I think, get a little bit more physically stout in certain areas so that they can win games different ways, right? So whether they're one O lineman short or one D lineman short, whatever that looks like, or a more physical back, and stylistically, right? Like, whatever that looks like, they're not far away, and they could still get there this year. But I don't think BC is going anywhere, and I think they did take a step forward, because I think if you'd have told me that they'd be in this spot with Vernon as their quarterback and have him play that well, I think you'd feel pretty good about the situation.
Yeah, nothing about it. I wouldn't, and I would not have said that going into the year. And I was very nervous. And I love Vernon, and local guy, and kind of all that stuff. In terms of
except for that 1 year at the University of Oregon, that's the only part of Vernon I don't like. Everything else about Vernon's story is good, except for the 1 year at Oregon.
Yeah, that's good. The Edmonton thing came out yesterday. They're shutting down the upper stands. Like, big deal, no big deal. How do you read that?
No big deal. I think they've kept them open as long as they have, because I think they philosophically feel we're the Edmonton football team, or, and we have the best attendance in the league, and we're not going to do anything artificial to take away from that attendance because we're Edmonton. But it's been a couple of tough seasons. I'm sure they'll open it up from time to time, like they're doing out here in BC, and they need to create some demand based on, how they market and position their their inventory, but also obviously in terms of what happens on the field, they've got to get better. But, I think Rick Lawlisher's doing a good job there in terms of regaining the footing in the marketplace. They're going to wind up hiring a new president. They've got some decisions to make at head coach and GM, but, not really a big deal. I don't think it's going to affect how that organization is perceived in the marketplace, because I do believe that the last month of this season has shown the fans in Edmonton are still there and they'll come back.
Yeah, how do you, in terms of moving forward here, obviously we had the Victor Cui stuff and everything this year. Like, how are we viewing Edmonton's health or, kind of foothold there? And what do they, I don't know. Cause like you said, the Trey Ford thing's kind of working out. They haven't fallen off the cliff that I think people thought it was going to this year.
The Trey Ford thing is giving the fans a lot of hope, right? And I think the organization is going to have to decide what's the best way to take advantage of that, right? And so if you believe that Trey Ford's the guy, then are you better off getting different coaches or trying to keep some stability in the building so he's not having to learn a different system and everything like that? So I don't know what the right answer is there. I think it could go either way. But I don't think it would take a ton to get the fans back. This isn't like Toronto where they've lost, a generation or more of fans, and you've really got to try to re-explain the language in the league and everything like that. Those fans are there. And we saw them, like I said, later in the season come back in bigger numbers when they had a reason to come back because they were being entertained. So, that team's got to get better. They've still got some defensive fixes they need to make, some offensive line fixes they need to make. I don't know whether financially what they're currently doing is the right thing at the receiver position if you want to improve the other areas of your team. So they've still got some fixes, but at least Trey Ford's given them hope. And they've got to best decide how to capitalize on that hope. But I don't think it's going to take much. I think there are other markets where you're more concerned about getting it fixed, including the one 2.5 hours to the south, right? Because, when you look at the apathy and attendance in Calgary, it's not good. And Edmonton's a better sports town than Calgary. Like, Calgary might be a more cool place to live if you were given a choice, but in terms of a sports town, Edmonton is better.
Yeah, so I want to talk Saskatchewan here, but do you think Calgary, there's issues here coming in because, mayor hasn't progressed the way they wanted and attendance is down. They're still in it, but it's such a weird playoff situation right now.
Yeah, Calgary, I think they need to do more as an organization. Similar problems, not as grave, but similar problems to what's going on in Toronto, right? Where, the organization needs to do more, because certainly in Toronto, from a football standpoint, they're doing everything possible. That's a really fun football team to watch. They're good. They'll probably be Grey Cup favorites. And then in Calgary, they're taking a step back. Now, the Calgary model and their philosophy has always been, we're not going to overpay for guys. And if we lose some free agents, we lose some free agents. We don't care. We're just going to continue to develop, but they're not identifying and developing. And it is harder for every team. The spring leagues make it hard for the CFL. There's simply no doubt. Whether you think the CFL game is better or the spring league game is better, the reality is agents will tell their players, stay here, and it's the same game, and you're going to get U.S. television and you get a few more eyeballs, and that hurts the CFL. The fact that we're losing some spring football, and I know you don't like that, but there'll be a few teams gone, and that'll make a few more players available. But how that relates to Calgary is most teams have adapted to a point. It's hard for all of them, but Calgary is behind in terms of adaptation. So they got to figure out if you're not going to identify and develop as well, then you better keep your guys, and you better decide we're going to pay to keep our guys and not lose selected guys like they did last year, right? So they've got to evolve. I don't think anyone's in trouble there. I don't think Dave Dickinson's going anywhere. And why would you get rid of Jake Mayer? And I say that because who are you going to get? Who are you going to get? Nathan's not coming back. Who are you going to get? So if it was me, I would stick with Jake, build the roster out a little bit more, and try to just get this season over with, because this is not good over there. I think half that team wants it over with, and just reset and charge.
In terms of the game here, Saskatchewan coming in, and they, if they win, right? I was just looking at my playoff scenarios, and they're in. I'm reading Saskatchewan, terrible year. They're raising season ticket prices. People are unhappy. There's the whole thing last year with Saskatchewan. Hey, they're going to host and they don't even make the playoffs. And how are you viewing that? Because it's kind of two troubled franchises you're facing off.
Yeah, I think Saskatchewan is in a position where they're setting themselves up for change. And I think they did a year ago too, right? Like, they made a conscious choice to not eliminate their coaches and general manager at that point because they had 1 year left on their deal. They didn't want to have to carry those contracts over into this year. So, but they didn't extend anybody. So now I think, and this is me speculating, like I think a lot would have to happen unexpected in terms of a deep playoff run, maybe getting to a Grey Cup in order for the team to bring back Craig Dickinson as head coach. I'm not advocating for that. I want to be clear, but I just, reading the tea leaves and the contractual situations around it, a lot would have to happen for them to want to come back because the franchise, the marketplace is hot. The marketplace wants change. Will that change extend to Jeremy O'Day? Because he's in the same situation contract-wise. He's up at the end of the year. And again, I'm not advocating for O'Day's dismissal. However, not a lot of high-end people wanted to apply for the offensive coordinator job this year. I think Kelly Jeffrey's a good OC, but others specifically chose not to because those guys had 1 year left on their deals above them, so it's not stable. So if you're Jeremy O'Day, can the club make the decision to extend him for 3 years? Because if you just roll his contract over for 1 year, who are you going to get to apply to be the head coach? Right? Like there are some people that'll do it just because, but ultimately it will affect your talent pool of head coach applicants if the guy above you that's doing the hiring only has 1 year, and that creates uncertainty, right? So, will it extend just because of the contractual situations? It could, but there's going to be change there because I don't see a scenario where they're going to pull off a playoff upset, or get to a Grey Cup. I think the marketplace is upset, right? And, they froze their prices coming out of COVID for season tickets. Now they're raising them again, which on the surface isn't wrong. But when you put this kind of product out there where they really slid in the back end of both seasons, that's tough for that market to digest, right? So there's some upset people, there's no doubt. But my understanding is that corporately and on other levels, they are still doing quite well. So don't let a few angry people on Twitter completely fool you.
Well, and there was I think it was when they had the TV schedule this year and all these Sunday or all these games and we're not going. Yeah. And I mean, it's funny how quickly kind of all that goes away. In terms of the Ottawa team, I see it a lot, because it's weird. And obviously last year, the injuries and Mazzoli, and then this year and all that stuff. Like people seem really upset with Bob Dice and the team and the effort there. And like, what are you reading with the Ottawa kind of room?
No change. No change at the GM or head coaching spots. I'm quite certain those spots are going to be retained, and I think you should, right? I mean, I think Sean Burke has done a good job to this point. I think, you need to give him a little more time, and Bob Dice has only had 1 year. So I think he's made some mistakes on the game management side. We can point to a number of games and say, if you'd made this decision, which would have been a little more logical, you wouldn't be in this position record-wise, but he has built a good culture. They're still playing for him. Even if they're not executing at a high level in that last game, they are still playing for him. They haven't quit on him. And I think that says a lot. The room has bought in. Might they make some change at the coordinator spots? I think that's possible. But, that'll be up to Bob Dice to decide. I don't think people above him are going to micromanage that situation. So I don't think there's going to be wholesale changes. And I think they just hope they can get the quarterback situation stabilized, right? Because did you see enough in Dustin Crum? Sounds to me like the marketplace has bought into Dustin Crum. I think there was kind of a up and then kind of a bit of a plateau. And I know he's dealing with some injuries and things like that as well. And they could be better at receiver. I think their O-line's really good, but I think they could get a little more dynamic at the receiver spot. So is Crum the guy you're going to hang your hat on? I know Jeremiah Masoli wants to play again next year. I can't imagine they're going to go to Jeremiah after these last two seasons and say, okay, Jeremiah, you're the starter. Same money, same situation, you're the starter. I think there'll probably be some sort of discussion there about trying to bring him back in a different role and maybe have a competition in training camp to see who the quarterback is going to be and continue for one more year trying to build it and have some continuity.
It was always getting up there, man. It's just hard. The same with Trevor Harris and all that stuff. I mean, I say this as someone elder than any of them, but it's challenging. Last thing for me, Bo played a little bit, Tie Cats. I was listening to the game driving back from BC. Like, is that a realistic situation there? And they're going in and playing Montreal here in the playoffs, kind of however that ends up being. But like, is that a realistic for the Ticats fans here after kind of it's been a weird season?
Yeah, but they're playing their best football right now these last two games. So they've got their quarterback situation back to what they were hoping for, right? I mean, I think Matthew Shills is going to continue to get an opportunity. I understand that both Bo and Matthew are going to play against the Lions on Friday. So it feels like there is a window there for Shills to get the ball to run with the rest of the season. He looked really good last week, and they just want to win. And the fact is he gives them an element with his legs that Bo can't offer, even though Bo's got more experience. So do I think that that Orlando Steinauer would be afraid to say we're going to let the $500,000 guy be the backup for the next few games and let the other guy run with it? I think they'd be prepared to do that. I'm not telling you that that's what's happening, but if Matthew Shills continues to play well this week, I think that door will stay open for him. But either way, I think we're going to see both of them. And I absolutely believe they can beat Montreal in a playoff game. Can they beat Toronto? I doubt it. But, we'll see, right? Because you might get a situation with the Argos where they just take some time to find their mojo again, right? Like this is kind of an awkward finish to the season for them, right? They've still got to make decisions with how they're going to handle Chad Kelly and other parts of their roster. So if they all of a sudden go into the playoffs with a lack of momentum, I don't know that they can just turn it on right away, right? And if they can't, could Montreal or Hamilton sneak in and upset them? Maybe. But I would still favor Toronto in either of those games. And I do absolutely believe that Hamilton could beat Montreal the way they're playing right now.
Well, I'm scared of BC going in, and I don't know. Do you rally after the game last week? Like that is
there will be an emotional hangover for the Lions. If the Lions win in Hamilton Friday, I'll be surprised.
Oh, okay. All right. Shout out and Washington Huskies here. Big game, and we'll get you out of here. But the big game.
That's the game I want to talk about. Come on, man. I can't believe you live in Seattle. You text me and DM me about the Mariners daily, which I like. But come on, man. Like, WTF, get into the Huskies. They're ranked 7th in the nation. They could be in the playoff. It's the last year of the Pac-12. Come on, Reed. I bet you Dorothy's a fan. I bet you Dorothy's into it.
No, Dorothy's a fan. Dorothy has her Winnipeg, her Washington stuff she wears is Winnipeg. But it is funny to think that we
purple,
went from,
not blue. Right there. That's not a Bomber's helmet. Right there. That's a Husky's helmet.
Well, we got to get
surfboard.
Yeah, we got to get her. It's just funny. I enjoyed the first time you came on and like your garden outside talking like XFL CFL talks, and now we're DMing about Paul Sewell doing cannonballs in the hot tub. So I do enjoy that. That is, I enjoy I can at least bother you a little bit about the Mariners. Farhan, I appreciate it. Making time today, it means a lot.
All right, buddy. We'll talk again soon.
Well, here we are. We had you on I think it was last season. Had a delight here. Greg Peach back again, former CFL here, standout. How is everything going? First off, Spokane here. We were talking pre-recorded. I went to Gonzaga, spent time over in Eastern Washington as well.
Yeah, no, it's been going great over here. I've been able to, just kind of plug myself into this community since I retired about 7 years ago. Run a training facility, Provision Academy, out of Spokane, and then also Provision Foundation. We help scholarship kids into different, club sports and camps out in this area. And then I'm always heavily invested in Eastern Washington football and athletics. I actually got to, about 3 weeks ago, I was the color commentary for our TV game for the first time, and that was a really cool experience, and it almost felt like another game, which I haven't had that feeling in a while. So it was cool.
Yeah, you never get that. That's I've heard. You never get that back, kind of that that feeling there. Spent time. Obviously, we'll talk Edmonton and Hamilton and kind of everything else here. I spent time up. I was at BC Place last Friday for the the overtime. Kind of heartbreaker, probably the most heartbreaking game I've been to, and not that we go to a lot of high stakes games. So what do you make of this? BC, Winnipeg, the West, kind of everything else CFL here?
Yeah, I've been, definitely, obviously tracking it, huge Winnipeg fan. And then I'm always, and obviously Edmonton and Hamilton, Winnipeg was just the last team that I was on that I really had a great experience with. But I love watching guys that I know that are playing and competing. So I followed BC Lions watching Vernon Adams and TJ Lee, doing their thing. And that game, I actually got to catch that game. And wow, like what a finish. And it's crazy that Winnipeg, they just keep doing it, and they now have that pedigree. They're kind of like Calgary when I was playing, and they've turned themselves into that. And so they finish those close games, or, you'll see them, they lose in the Labor Day game, but then they come back and put 50 on them. It's been fun to watch. And I know that who's in that organization and those guys, and I'm happy for them because they're good dudes and they're doing it the right way. And, but yeah, that was a crazy, crazy finish.
Well, to me, it felt, and that's kind of why I told my wife, like, we should go to this. I mean, it kind of felt like the season. I don't know. I lived through last year, and we beat the pants off Calgary in the semis, and then we went into IG Field last year. The Nathan Rourke wasn't quite up to speed, and frozen tundra and kind of all that stuff. Kind of felt the same way this year. What are your thoughts here? BC making a run. Like, I've got Farhan on the show as well here. We're going to kind of talk through. I know he was doing the commentary for that game. Like, is the season? How do you feel about the BC Lions season right now?
I mean, I think they definitely have a shot. They got, that receiver, great weapon. I think is White, is it? And like we saw with Winnipeg and Toronto, that was not what I thought was going to happen. And so when you get yourself into the playoff race and you get yourself into those games, you can never count out BC coming in and beating Winnipeg. Obviously Winnipeg is going to be the favorite going all the way to the Grey Cup, but I do like what I'm seeing from BC, and it's obviously I'm rooting for Winnipeg, but Vernon, just a top-notch dude, and I'm so excited for him and the success that he's having. I mean, he's bombing it this year, and I'd love to see him break that 5,000 yards for the season.
Well, it's cool with Vernon because obviously, Eastern Washington guy, and he's in Tacoma now, and not even really that far from where I'm at. Like, to me, that was really the question point going into the season is Vernon. It's a little bit of a, you're on the roller coaster. It's exciting, but it's also a little scary sometimes. I mean, save for the Toronto game where he threw the 6 interceptions, like, really, I mean, that's a big outlier. Really, he, like you said, he's played phenomenally well here, and finally feeling like he's comfortable. And I know he's got a lot of talent around him, and so does Zach, and so does Chad Kelly. I mean, these are good. The good teams in the CFL feel like they're really good right now. So, I don't know. It's just been really nice to see because I was scared for Vernon going into the season.
Man, everyone was about ready to just get rid of him after that game. This is the real Vernon, and I felt bad after that happened, but I know how much he invests in his off seasons and into the teams, which is one thing that will separate you in the CFL is those leaders that take charge when you don't have to be up there. And that's what he's done since he's kind of become that premier guy. And you can see, obviously that worked out, and he's taken that next step, to being that guy and solidifying himself as a top CFL quarterback. So, it really couldn't happen to a better guy. That's another reason. And I can, just from personal insight and knowing him that, he deserves this. So it's cool to watch, especially after that six-pick game.
In terms of Edmonton, obviously, when your former teams, news coming out this week, kind of doing the BC Place route, we're not going to open the Upper Bowl anymore. And I don't know how that works with like how many season tickets are up there, all that stuff. What did you make of that? Because I think there's, I saw people like laughing online, and this is a joke, but they also saw people, well, it's going to make more intimate experience. So what do you make of this?
As a fan, I look at it and I'd be saying like, well, if I am on that upper deck, my seats better not cost more if you're moving me. And as a player playing, I love when they close that off. I want it to be more personal. I want it to be, everyone close to the field. I played in a lot of stadiums like that. When you play at a mid-major D1, you're going to Montana and you're playing against 30,000 fans, and they're right there on you. And it feels like 100 because I've played in those stadiums too. And sometimes those 30,000 seat stadiums are louder than the big 90 or 100,000 stadiums. So, and especially in Edmonton, I think it'd be a way better experience. And I think BC is doing a great job of getting excitement over there with those fans. And, obviously winning helps, but yeah, you can't have stragglers up there. It's just a bad look, in my opinion. And yeah, honestly, when I was playing in Edmonton, I think there was one game. It was my 2009 rookie season. We had Saskatchewan coming in. It was for first place, middle of the year. And there was, they said around 60,000 people there, which is awesome. Okay, open it up. You got 60. Open it up. But that's not happening right now. And, I'm not trying to dog on Edmonton, but 4 wins. Let's close up the upper section there.
It was crazy. We were flying back because I was in Vegas for the Kraken game on Tuesday, the opener at Vegas. And we were sitting there at the airport, and these guys were talking about going up and seeing the Vancouver Canucks game. And they're like, oh, okay, Rogers Center. Okay, what's BC Place? And so we got into this whole conversation because I'm like, what? I was just there, and the Lions and all that. And we were looking online, huge capacity for BC Lions. And some of the numbers they were drawn early on, I was astounded. They're like, oh yeah, the Lions first game there had like 53,000 people. I'm like, that's insane. I mean, because we were there, biggest game of the year on Friday, and it was not even less than half that. Really, just remarkable to kind of track some of these, and it's a sign of the times and everything else. But a far cry from where kind of BC Place was back when it opened up.
That's crazy. I don't know if I played a game that was more than 30,000 over there when I was playing it. I don't even know if it touched 30. Like even in Edmonton was always the highest as far as attendance, and it was around like 35 was the average. And like I said, you get a one-off in a big game. But yeah, it's definitely kind of tracked down. But I do like, being in the States here, I can follow, but I don't get to follow as closely as, watching every game on the weekend kind of thing. But I do like the excitement that they're bringing. We had this conversation last time about what they could do on social media, and I do think they're getting better at that. And like you said, just kind of with the times. But now it's getting people out of their freaking house to go to a game, because then you get all the everything online that you can see. Like, I'll just watch the highlight here, and that looks cool. But and that's what BC has done a good job of. I always watch the president, on Twitter, and what he's doing to get excitement there. So there are teams that are doing it, and some ones on the West and East Coast that have to go the hardest with that, because, Saskatchewan's always going to be Saskatchewan, and they're always going to get that crowd. Winnipeg, same thing. But yeah, it's those coast teams that got to step their game up.
Well, and like you said, it's hard, TV, and for the most part, I think the demos and numbers this year, at least, with 3 downs tracking, have been good, right? TV ratings have been good, but it's like you said, it's getting people in. I know the XFL, they, and a myriad of other issues with these alt leagues, but, they spend so much time on the broadcast, TV broadcast. So we've got the microphones everywhere, and you can hear everything, and we're doing all this stuff. Like, I don't get any of that when I go to the stadium. So you need to figure out, and, I know, like Edmonton was trying to do that with like the suites, you get the all you can eat, and the you're on the field, whatever couches, whatever. You have to do something, because if I'm getting a better experience watching on TV, it's really hard to to pay and go and do. I just spent whatever it was to go to Vegas to do all this. Like, you're asking a lot of your fans, like you said, when I can sit on my phone on Twitter and watch it on TV and get probably a superior experience.
Yeah, no doubt. And for me too, I'm an Eastern fan, and I have season tickets. I'm out here talking about fans got to get out there, but I don't go to every game that we have. But I will go, if there is an opportunity, to get on the field, or get, they have like the tents with the all you can eat and the drinks, and that is the route that you got to go, because CFL has always been that way anyway, as far as the fan experience with the players. But that getting on that field for the warm-ups, even for after, Winnipeg does an incredible job of that. I always remembered those games. I was always talking to fans. There was, hundreds on the field before and then after, even as brutal as, a season we had my last year, you're out there signing autographs for fans, and it doesn't feel great, but I know it's definitely helping those kids out and those parents, and it makes them want to come back for sure to support the team. So maybe they need to have a chat with Wade Miller and get the playbook.
Yeah, no, I think so. In terms of, Edmonton season, it wasn't the greatest, right? Kind of took a little too long to go to the Trey Ford experience. Like, what would you make of just the overall season this year? Because I think, looking now, it feels like they have momentum going into the next year where, people were screaming, fire Chris Jones and kind of all this stuff. Like, what do you, kind of a weird situation where like it was a failure this year, but through that, maybe we found success here moving forward.
Yeah, man, I was in the same boat, and I don't really, I'm not putting my opinions out there too much about it because I know how hard it is to make those decisions as GM and a head coach, and even for those players, like, you're feeling bad for a lot of those guys, and I know a couple of them in Edmonton still, but Chris, the thing about Chris Jones is, it's not a situation where everyone's like rooting for him because he kind of plays that villain role anyway in the CFL, and my way or the highway. So that's, I think, piles on even more from the fans and anyone outside his organization. Now, people that play for him that I've talked to absolutely love playing for him. And if you can make his squad, you really earned it because he's very cutthroat. He's looking for the best guys, and he's got kind of a certain guy that he wants. And if you're not that, you're probably not going to be there. So when you make his squad, you love playing for him. But that switch obviously needed to be made way sooner, and we're seeing the results of it. And I've been very impressed with Trey Ford. It's a cool storyline for this year.
Well, and I think it's, this whole promoting, the Canadian talent and everything. To me, there's too many good things about the situation where it is just weird it took so long. I mean, we love Cornelius and kind of we tracked him even through the XFL and all that stuff. But like, it's just amazing that the difference that team seems to look and feel here with Trey Ford. And it seems like it's only kind of picking up. I know they haven't had as many wins closing out the year, but it certainly feels like a different team.
Yeah. And you could just... it was almost that thing where it's like, I'm not going to do what the fans want. I'm going to do it my way. And, but at the end of the day, that's what you're going to get out of Chris Jones. That's how he's always been. And that's why he's been so successful in the league. So I think he gets him in there earlier. They got a much better shot, playoff shot, but now he might've saved his contract at least, knowing they got somebody coming in next year that can sling it and win games. So he made the right choice by getting him in there just a little too late.
Talking about Hamilton here, kind of a weird season for them, obviously with the Bo Levi's and all of that. And then they came in and beat Saskatchewan right at home last week, kind of a dominant, pantsing of Saskatchewan. They're going to be in the playoffs. Cody Fajardo's kind of hot and cold. We're fans of Cody here, but what do you make of that? Because I do think I think whether it's Saskatchewan or Calgary, I think BC kind of takes care of that, right? And then goes into Winnipeg. But to me, the playoffs on the East are a little bit more interesting that way. What do you make of that with the Hamilton, with their season and then kind of going into the outlets? Yeah,
I mean, Steinauer's got a tough choice there going in because I know that Bo is just coming back and they're not, they want him healthy for that run. But it's how much are they going to lean on him? And I've obviously followed Bo as another former Eastern Washington Eagle. Go Eagles. And so I'm excited that he's back and, he got to play a little bit last week and did well, but in the playoffs too, to be able to have guys that even if as a backup that can play and win games, Bo's got just a great resume. Obviously everyone understands that. So going into the playoffs to be able to have a couple guys that can win, that's huge for them. But it'll be an interesting decision by the coach, man. It's funny. You can get to a spot, And when you get to the playoffs, man, that's when the pressure just hits on these guys. I've been a part of teams where, you know, they make decisions. You're like, what are we doing? We've done it this way the whole time. But yeah, there's so many different things too that we don't understand contractually with these players too. And, you know, they're trying to piece together a team for next year as well. And, you know, keep people happy. So yeah, that'll be interesting.
Yeah, because I mean, just looking here, you know, BC coming in, and that's, you know, BC's got to keep pace here, and you know, this coming up this weekend, kind of a must-win for them. So it's weird. It's a weird timing with just looking at the schedule, and then Hamilton having a late bye, and then playing Montreal there, and what could be kind of a weird preview of the playoffs. It's just weird. Like, you're getting Bo back, you know. Would it have been better off getting it back a couple weeks ago? I mean, obviously you can't, whatever, but it's late now where it's like we got to use him. You know, Taylor Powell, Matthew Schultz have kind of gotten us to this point. It's a tricky situation there. It seems like it's a crowded space, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it is. And when I got to Edmonton, it was the story was always told about, you know, Ricky Ray and Jason Moss going into the Grey Cup game because, you know, Moss had won a couple of the playoff games to get him to the Grey Cup because Ricky was hurt. And then it was a game time decision, and they went with Ricky, and then they win the Grey Cup. And yeah, it's such a tough decision you got to make going into those situations. But that's what that's why that was Danny Machoch's calling. That's why he's still in the league. So you can say what you want about him, but he's still got a job in the CFL. So he's made some tough decisions, and some of them are the right ones.
Well, Greg, I appreciate coming on today. Anything else? Any other things you're looking forward to this weekend or through the rest of the year?
I'm excited for I was kind of looking at the upcoming schedule, and it's funny, there's only 3 games for the last two weeks, which is a totally different thing than I'm used to seeing. So they really made this a long season to get to the playoffs. Like, holy crap, it feels like we should be starting next week, but here we go. 3 more weekends. I'll be, you know, it's tough down here to watch every game, but I'll be checking it out. And then when the playoff starts, you know, that's when I'm on my couch. So
yeah, it's you know, I've had conversations even on this show with the commissioner. Like, you know, a lot was made of the CFL or CBS Sports, whatever, you know, sports streaming, and unless you're on that CFL Plus for a lot of these games, it's really hard to watch them. And I just like, I would like this to be revisited, a different way for us American viewers to watch these on demand, because it is hard. And even on our Monday recaps, I rely a lot on Jason Hussey, one of the guys, you know, in Hamilton, to really kind of have the in-depth breakdown of all these, because it is hard. Like, if I'm out on a Saturday for 2 hours, it's like, well, that was it. Like, you can't, you know, you can't go back. So, Greg, I appreciate it. You best of luck with everything, and like I said, with the everything over in Eastern Washington and everything else. I appreciate you coming on today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Love talking CFL, man.
Well, here is someone we've watched every week, really, you know, and we can talk Edmonton and all that, but really kind of have a stellar season. Kevin Brown here with the Edmonton Elks. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing good.
I was watching some of your post game, getting ready for this and everything. It just seems like a joyous, like, happy guy. I mean, how do you kind of keep? I don't know. It just seems like you have a great personality about you.
Yeah, I do. I mean, it's all from my upbringing. You know what I'm saying? So like, I'm an optimistic kind of person. So I always look at like the bright side of things. You know what I'm saying? When something goes wrong, there's always a positive. So I always look for the positive, and that keeps me, you know, in the uplifting spirit. So yeah, I'm a happy kind of guy.
It's funny. It's always like the most physical, talented people on the field always seem to be like, I interview a lot of like defensive guys on here, and we've had like Matthew Betts with the BC Lions and stuff. I'm like, it's always seems like the guys that just will beat you on the field are always the nicest guys. It's just kind of funny.
Yeah, definitely though. Definitely. I ran into a couple of them before.
So how's it been like for you this year? I mean, let's talk personally first and then team wise. How has been your 2023 on the football field?
Personally, I would say there's definitely been some ups and downs, you know what I'm saying? For me, I think in the beginning I wasn't where I wanted to be, but like, you know, getting more comfortable and like I was in my head a lot. So and like once I realized, just like play free, play relax, and play calm. I mean, I believe everything came, clearer to me. So since I started doing that, everything's been going good for me.
Did you feel like, and we've had on, even Coach Jones on last year, we had him on kind of after the season. Do you feel like the staff that you guys have in place that helps you, they kind of help you succeed?
Oh yeah, definitely. I have some of the coaches come up to me, give me some encouraging words. Like my running back coach, I've for me, I was like questioning myself sometimes. And then my coach was like, it's all about confidence. You're the guy, you could do what you do. I've seen it before. You just got to trust in your ability, trust in yourself. And that, I feel like that helped me a lot.
So you, right, on with the team last year, first full season this year, right? Being put in a really prominent position. How did that feel, and how did you kind of internalize that? Because, it's a lot of pressure on.
Yeah, I feel like don't try to look at it as that way. You know what I'm saying? Try to for me, I feel like doing the small things can help lead to being greater things. So that's what I really try to harp on.
In terms of kind of learning process going into everything in the CFL, has it challenging you at all? Like I said, from 2022 into 2023.
Oh yeah, like when I first got here, definitely, because I only had like 3 days of practice, and then I was thrown into the game. So it came at me fast, and then like once I was like during that whole 2022 process, I was still learning the offense. I was still learning, all the rules to the game and everything. And then once 2023 season came around, I found myself getting comfortable. I knew the offense, I knew the players, I knew the tendencies. So that time really helped me progress into what I'm doing now.
Did you have thoughts of the CFL before you came up? I mean, I'm from Seattle, so I have thoughts as well. I mean, did you have thoughts entering the league that maybe lived up or didn't live up to what you thought? Change, different perspective.
Really, I thought I was never going to be in the CFL because I had tryouts from the Broncos, I had tryouts from the Ravens. I thought I was going to land one of those spots, but it didn't happen. So when I got the call, I jumped on it right away because it's an opportunity to show what I can produce. So never thought I had thoughts about going to Canada, but now that I'm here, I'm liking it. I'm getting to a nice feel about it, and it's going well for me.
Do you like Edmonton? I've never been there. I think it's probably pretty frigid certain times of the year.
Oh, Edmonton is nice. Edmonton is nice. It's a great. I feel like it's called Providence, or is it Alberta? I'm sorry, I don't.
Yeah, Alberta's the Providence. You're good. You're good.
Yeah. But no, it's nice. The people are nice. The food is amazing. I'm a foodie, so the food is amazing. The people are nice, like I said before. I mean, it's a great place to be, honestly.
In terms of, we've tracked Edmonton here the last couple of years, and maybe not the season I think anyone wanted. There's been a little bit of ups and downs. What has it kind of been the mentality through the locker room here during the season?
The mentality is focus on the next game. Like even if you win or lose, you got to focus on the next game. The mentality in the locker room and like the coaching staff has been uplifting. You know what I'm saying? But you have your adversities, you have your ups and downs, but it's all mental. So you have to learn, to deal with it and to go back and look on like what mistakes that you made and try to improve on that. So what I do is I try to get the saying, get 1% better every day. I take that to heart. So, you have a bad game or you mess up, try not to mess up again on the same thing. So, you just got to look forward to the next play or to the next game.
Do you feel like having the season, and it certainly swung up here more recently, but does that make the locker room closer? Have you guys been able to bond? Because I could see it being the other way, right? Where you're like, hey, we're kind of getting argumentative. Do you feel like you guys have bonded through all this?
Oh, definitely. The guys that we have on the team and the staff, we where everybody came from, you know what I'm saying, whatever the background people have, it's you could definitely see it because we definitely came closer. So win or lose, we're always going to have each other's backs. We're always going to look for, trying to help each other or better each other. Iron sharpens iron. So we definitely have those type of guys in the locker room, and that's gonna help us get to the next level.
In terms of, kind of, and obviously there was a lot of the story this year with the quarterback and stuff. We had Trey on preseason because I thought Trey's going to be a super, I try to hitch my wagon to, these guys like this can be. We finally get to that position, right? We love Cornelius and all that other stuff. Having someone like Trey, what does that help you do from your position of, where he's a threat, right? Then you're going to be like, how does that help to add into the offense there?
With Trey in the back, I feel like he's a dual threat personally for me because he can run it, as you've seen, as many people seen before. He's dangerous on his feet, but he's also, he has an arm and he has eyes, he has the vision. And it helps me because the defense doesn't know if he's gonna take it. Like if we have a play action or whatever, they don't know if he's gonna pull it and run off with it or like pass it or he's gonna give it off. So it gives the defense, some honor to where they have to like play both of us. So if he gives it, I do what I do, and if he pulls it, he does what he does. And either way, we're gonna get some yards off of it.
Is he a good leader in terms of the offense of that, or where do you guys look to when you're on the play field? Like who's kind of helping rally the troops there?
I feel like it definitely starts with the quarterback, and Trey is definitely he definitely can do it. He's shown it before. He's done it almost every game, and we look to Trey for us to be, we look for Trey to be the leader, and he is.
In terms of this weekend, like I said, your season, kind of out of it here, a chance to play spoiler a little bit to the Montreal coming. They have a really impressive defense. I've had lots of their guys on the show. Like, what are you looking forward to that? Because I do think that this could be kind of a heavy hitting in terms of, strengths on both sides of the ball. So what are you looking forward to?
Honestly, I don't know, but they have a good defense. They're physical. They play fast. But for us, I feel like we just have to strike fast. We have to be fast. We have to start ahead of them. You know what I'm saying? We have to hit them before they hit us. And I feel like that's what we have to do and be physical for us to, come on top for this game.
What's the, being out of it, what's the message in the locker room, I guess, going in just one game at a time still, or how are you approaching this maybe now that the season's a little out of hand?
We're approaching this game and the next game as this is a playoff game. This is a playoff game, and we're looking, to capitalize on the next season. We're building now for next season, and we're approaching every game like it's a playoff game. So for us, it's to be physical, to hit them first, and to come out fast. That's how we're approaching it.
I like that. Well, Kevin, I appreciate that. I appreciate you making the time and, getting near the end of the season here, but it certainly feels like you guys have the upswing and we're getting everything. It was a little messy there mid. We don't need to get into all that, but it does feel good. Edmonton, I got a lot of friends up there, on both sides and calling the games and stuff. So I appreciate it. And thanks for making the time today.
Oh, yes, sir. No problem.
And being so punctual. I just want to point that out again. Kevin, very punctual, but and it's always kind of a mixed bag. So Kevin, I appreciate it. We watch and talk about you guys every week. So I appreciate it and good luck this weekend.
I appreciate it. Thank you, man.
Huge special thanks again to all of our guests. Really appreciate Anthony Miller hopping on after his work schedule and all his personal life, everything else going on, balancing all of that. Really appreciate that. Super appreciate Farhan making time, busy guy, and then obviously Greg Peach coming on with all of his commitments, and Kevin Brown, Edmonton Elks. Really appreciate you guys setting that up. Like I said, Edmonton certainly one of the best teams to work with in terms of kind of providing players, and like when Victor Cui, was involved in kind of all that stuff. So super appreciate that. And that will do it for me today. Good luck here to the Kraken over the weekend, back in the hockey season. Should be some good CFL games as well. Hopefully, Farhan's predicting the Hamilton upset here with BC. So we'll see, but should be excited. Make sure you're subscribed. Keep you up to date on all the XFL, USFL merger news, the NSFL, whatever we're going to call it when that finally comes about. So make sure you're subscribed. We'll see you next time. Thanks.